Did you know that all this meat in front of me is tenderizing right before your eyes as I film this video? Hi, it's Jess from Hardcore Carnivore. Today we're going to be talking about wet aging, and I'm also going to be giving you some tips and info on vacuum sealing. Meat nerds, mount up! So all these pieces of meat in front of me, from these ribs to these steaks to these roasts, they're all wet aging right now in front of us. So you might have heard of dry aging, and when that's done correctly, it can actually be a pretty expensive and somewhat complicated process. But wet aging is literally just vacuum sealing the meat and leaving it. And you don't need a dedicated fridge because the seal is preventing all your fridge flavors from mingling with your meat. And while wet aging doesn't have an impact on flavor, it absolutely affects tenderness. Here's how it works. See, during the slaughter process, the animal goes into rigor, which is basically a state where the muscles permanently contract and tighten. I'll give you an example. Grab your thumb and forefinger and squish them together like this, and then feel your palm. Now let them go and feel your palm again. There's such a difference there, and that's that contraction of the muscle. And when they contract, they're really, really tough. So what we're looking to do is break some of the bonds that are causing those contractions. And to do that, if we seal the meat in vacuum, we lock it in with these enzymes that actually start to break down those bonds and tenderize the meat. And yes, all you got to do that is put it in a vacuum seal bag. The more you know. Obviously, this is great news for roasts and steaks, anything we're looking to get to like a medium rare. It's not that useful for barbecue because you're actually going to cook it till tender anyway, so there's no real point in aging, if that makes sense. And while all this cool meat science is happening inside the seal, there's another benefit, which is extended freshness. Meat actually oxidizes when it's exposed to air. It's a slow process of deterioration that we call auto-oxidation. In other words, it starts its journey to spoilage, and fats, which meat nerds call lipids, are particularly susceptible to this and can start to develop oxidative rancidity. And if you know anything about the word rancid, you know that's not a good thing. But to translate, the fat can start to take on some pretty gnarly flavors and smells, and that is no bueno. But when you keep the air out, which is exactly what vacuum sealing does, you dramatically slow down that process and you can really extend the shelf life. I'm talking like weeks. We've talked about aging, we've talked about tenderness, and now we're going to talk about color. Have you ever looked at something in vacuum seal and thought, I don't know, it's not the most appealing shade, maybe it's a bit pale, maybe it's a little purple? This brings us to a conversation about the meat color wheel. There are biochemical reactions that happen in meat weeks after slaughter, and perhaps the coolest one is the change of color. The color of meat is determined by a protein called myoglobin, and it can turn from purple to red to brown and sometimes even back again. Now, while your gold standard might be cherry red color, where it actually starts off is the purple color that's called deoxymyoglobin. And when you expose it to oxygen, it blooms and turns that cherry red color, and that's called oxymyoglobin. So it's not uncommon at all for vacuum sealed meats to have that purplish hue, but when you open up that packaging and expose them to air, magic happens. Check out this time lapse of some fillets that I've opened up from the vac seal. This is about 15 minutes exposed to air. You can see them turn from purple to bright red. And just in case you missed it, here's the photo of how it started, and here's how it ended. Meat science is pretty cool, right? The next time you see steaks like this, you know what they're going to turn into. And since you made it through the whole video with me, here's some gratuitous footage of those fillets being seared and then sliced because you deserve it. Thus ends this Meat Science episode on vacuum seal. Don't forget, for more recipes and meat info, you can head to my website, jesspryles.com, or come find me on the socials. I'll see you next time, carnivores.